The divorce papers slammed onto the polished marble table with a sound so sharp that the wine glasses trembled beside them. Ethan didn't sit down. He didn't even look Emma in the eyes for more than a second. "Sign them," he said, voice flat, cold, rehearsed. "Vanessa can give me the future you never could." Emma didn't move, didn't cry, didn't flinch. Her eyes drifted slowly from his face down to his wrist, to the gleaming new watch wrapped around it. She knew that watch. She knew the boutique it came from. She knew the private equity fund that had quietly financed the retailer that sold it. She said nothing about it. Ethan mistook her silence for defeat. He grabbed the pen, signed the final page himself without waiting for her, snatched the keys to the Range Rover his wealthy client had gifted him, and walked out of the apartment they had shared for 6 years without looking back. The door didn't even slam. It just clicked shut, quietly, like the end of something that had already died long before that night. 3 months later, a gold-embossed invitation arrived at Emma's new address. Celebration Gala. New corporate partnership. Grand Aurora Tower. Emma read it twice, then let out a soft, tired laugh, the kind of laugh that carries more pain than joy, because Ethan had no idea what he was about to walk into. He wasn't celebrating inside someone else's building. He was about to celebrate inside hers. And before that night was over, every person in that glittering ballroom would find out exactly who really owned the room they were standing in. Before we go further, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching this from tonight. We genuinely love hearing from you all over the world. And if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss one of our upcoming stories. All right, let's get back into it. To understand how Emma Carter ended up standing quietly in the shadows of her own empire while her husband celebrated another woman, you have to go back to the beginning, back to who Emma really was before Ethan ever knew her name. Emma wasn't born into money. She was a Black Canadian girl from a modest neighborhood in Scarborough, raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. She learned early that nothing in life would be handed to her, so she built everything with her own hands. She studied computer science on scholarship, slept 4 hours a night through university, and by 26, she had built an AI-powered workflow platform that multinational corporations quietly began adopting behind closed doors. At 31, she sold that company for nearly $200 million. Most people in her position would have bought a mansion, posted it online, hired a publicist, and become a headline. Emma did the opposite. She disappeared from public view entirely. She created a web of anonymous holding companies, each one carefully separated from her real name. Through those companies, she quietly acquired commercial office towers, tech parks, luxury residential buildings, data centers, renewable energy shares, and private equity stakes across 3 countries. Nobody connected the quiet, soft-spoken woman who wore thrifted cardigans and drove a used Lexus to any of it. Not her neighbors, not her old classmates, not even the man she married. Ethan Brooks had been charming when they met. Ambitious, hard-working, the kind of man who talked about his 5-year plan on the second date. Emma liked that he seemed grounded, humble, someone who didn't need attention to feel like he mattered. For the first few years, he genuinely loved her simplicity. He used to tell her, "You're the realest person I know, Em. Everyone else is performing. You're just you." But somewhere between his second promotion and his invitation into an elite investment circle, something in Ethan began to shift. Slowly at first, then all at once. Success wasn't enough anymore. He wanted the appearance of success. Designer suits instead of the ones Emma had helped him pick out at outlet stores. First-class lounges instead of the coffee shop where they used to plan their future. He started attending exclusive events where net worth was currency, and Emma, in her quiet cardigans and her 10-year-old car, began to embarrass him. He never said it directly. Not at first. It came out in small cruelties. "You really wore that to my work dinner?" he asked once, looking her up and down in the hallway mirror. "I like this dress," Emma said softly. "It's fine for a Tuesday at home," Ethan muttered, straightening his cufflinks. "Not for people who actually matter." Emma said nothing. She simply picked up her coat and followed him out the door. At company parties, he introduced her only as "my wife," never mentioning that she held a master's degree, never mentioning any accomplishment, as if she were a decorative accessory rather than a person. At charity dinners, he would disappear into conversations with investors and leave her sitting alone at the table for hours, sipping water while everyone else clinked champagne glasses around her. She heard the whispers. She wasn't supposed to, but she did. "I don't know why he's still married to her," one woman said near the bar, not lowering her voice nearly enough. "She's holding him back. He could do so much better." Emma stared down at her hands and said nothing. She had learned, over the years, that silence often revealed more about the people speaking than any response ever could. That was when Vanessa Morgan entered the picture. Vanessa was everything Ethan had started to crave: polished, magnetic, dripping in quiet luxury. An international venture capitalist who controlled hundreds of millions in startup investments. She arrived everywhere in chauffeur-driven cars, owned vacation properties in Aspen and along the Amalfi Coast, and carried herself like she had never once doubted her place in any room. She was 10 years older than Ethan. She didn't love him. She barely needed to pretend to. What Vanessa saw in Ethan wasn't romance. It was utility. Ambitious young executives were useful pieces on her board, and Ethan, hungry and impressionable, was exactly the kind of piece she liked to collect. The gift started small. A Tom Ford suit, just because. Then a Rolex to celebrate the merger. Then a business-class ticket to Singapore for a networking opportunity that somehow required no other colleagues to attend. Then a membership at an exclusive golf club that cost more per year than Ethan's first car. Emma watched all of it happen in real time. She said nothing. She wasn't naive. She saw the messages that lit up his phone late at night, the sudden new cologne, the way his voice softened when a certain name flashed on his screen. But Emma had learned patience the way most self-made people learn it, through years of watching, waiting, and understanding that reacting too early only gives your enemies time to prepare. So she watched. She learned. She waited. The public humiliation reached its peak on a cold November evening, during an executive dinner hosted by Ethan's company. Emma had dressed simply that night, sitting quietly near the end of the long table, watching her husband laugh a little too loudly at something Vanessa whispered in his ear. Then Ethan stood, raised his glass, and cleared his throat for a toast. The room quieted. "In every successful man's life," he said, smiling directly at Vanessa, "there's someone who truly believes in him. Someone who sees his potential before the rest of the world catches up." The entire room applauded. He never once looked at his wife. Emma sat there for a long moment, feeling the eyes of the room drift toward her, feeling the pity and the whispers building behind polite smiles. Then, without a word, without a single tear, she rose from her seat, smoothed her dress, and quietly excused herself from the table. No scene, no shouting, no breakdown, just silence. The kind of silence that terrifies people far more than screaming ever could. The next morning, the divorce papers arrived at their apartment. Within 2 weeks, Ethan had moved into Vanessa's penthouse overlooking downtown Toronto, floor-to-ceiling windows framing a skyline he had always dreamed of owning a piece of. His co-workers congratulated him in the break room. Social media buzzed about the new power couple. Someone even posted a photo of them at a rooftop bar with the caption, "Some people are just built for greatness." Emma disappeared from all of it, or at least that's what everyone assumed. If you're still watching up to now, type "I'm still here" in the comments section, because trust me, what happens next is the part you do not want to miss. While Ethan was busy building a new life on Vanessa's arm, Emma was doing what she had always done best, working quietly in the background, building something far larger than anyone around her could imagine. Her days were filled with private meetings with investment bankers, reviewing commercial leases stacked in leather folders, approving multi-million-dollar acquisitions with a single signature, and personally inspecting skyscrapers she owned but had never publicly claimed. She flew between Toronto, Vancouver, New York, and London so often that her assistant, Priya, had long stopped asking why a woman who owned so much still insisted on flying without an entourage. One afternoon, Priya knocked gently on Emma's office door, tablet in hand. "Ma'am, we received a booking request for the Aurora Tower Ballroom," she said. "It's for a corporate partnership gala. Should we reject it?" The client is one of the tenants, Ethan Brooks' company. Emma looked up slowly from her desk. For the first time in months, Something flickered behind her calm expression. Not sadness, not anger, but something colder and far more calculated. "No," she said quietly. "Don't reject it." Priya blinked. "Should we approve it as is, then?" Emma leaned back in her chair, a small, unreadable smile forming on her lips. "Upgrade it," she said. "Give them everything they didn't ask for." Over the following weeks, Emma personally authorized a completely transformed event. She doubled the budget without blinking. She ordered massive LED screens to be installed throughout the ballroom, hired a live orchestra instead of a simple DJ, brought in five-star catering from one of the city's most exclusive chefs, and commissioned towering floral installations imported specifically for the occasion. She approved an open bar stocked with vintage champagne that most guests would never have tasted in their lives. And then she began curating the guest list herself. She personally invited some of the country's most powerful CEOs, leading tech founders, institutional bankers who controlled billion-dollar portfolios, commercial real estate investors who had quietly done business with her for years without ever meeting her in person. She even reached out, through her holding company, of course, to several federal ministers who owed favors to organizations Emma silently controlled. And finally, almost as an afterthought that carried enormous weight, she personally extended invitations to every single board member of Ethan's company. Nobody understood why the tenant relations department had suddenly become so generous. Not yet. The night of the gala arrived wrapped in glittering anticipation. Aurora Tower's grand ballroom shimmered beneath massive crystal chandeliers, their light bouncing off polished marble floors that stretched wide enough to swallow footsteps whole. Outside, a long procession of luxury vehicles pulled up to the entrance, gleaming Bentleys, sleek Mercedes Maybachs, a fleet of Rolls-Royces gliding to a stop beneath a canopy of camera flashes. Vanessa stepped out first, radiant in a floor-length gown, greeting reporters and business partners with practiced elegance. She believed, with complete certainty, that this night belonged entirely to her. A celebration not just of a corporate partnership, but of everything she had built and everyone she had conquered along the way. Ethan followed behind her, adjusting his cufflinks, greeting colleagues with confident handshakes, basking in the glow of a life he believed he had finally earned. To him, this night represented the peak of everything he had chased: status, recognition, luxury, power. He had absolutely no idea what was coming. The lights inside the ballroom dimmed just after the appetizers were cleared. A single spotlight cut through the darkness, landing center stage where the master of ceremonies stood waiting, microphone raised. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host began, voice smooth and formal. "Before we continue this evening's celebrations, we would like to take a moment to thank someone very special, the visionary investor whose leadership transformed Aurora Tower into one of Canada's premier innovation hubs." Ethan smiled politely from his seat near the front, assuming, as everyone else did, that some distant billionaire was about to walk on stage to accept polite applause before disappearing again. Then Emma walked out, not from the side entrance, not quietly. She stepped directly into the center of that spotlight in a deep emerald gown, poised, composed, radiating a quiet authority the room had never seen from her before. The audience rose to their feet. Several of the most powerful executives in the room rushed forward to greet her personally, shaking her hand with genuine reverence. Ethan's own CEO embraced her warmly, thanking her by name for years of partnership. The company's chairman leaned in and thanked her, loudly enough for nearby tables to hear, for allowing their headquarters to lease space below market rate for the past 3 years, a personal favor she had extended without ever revealing her identity to the tenants she quietly protected. Ethan sat frozen in his chair, his champagne glass trembling slightly in his hand. Across the table, Vanessa's confident smile began to crack at the edges. Her mind raced, piecing together fragments of information far too quickly for comfort. Emma Carter, the reclusive investor everyone in her circle had spoken about in hushed, respectful tones for years, but had never actually met. The woman behind at least a dozen major acquisitions across the city. the name attached to holding companies Vanessa herself had unknowingly done business with. The realization hit her like ice water. Emma didn't just attend events at Aurora Tower. Emma owned Aurora Tower. Every office floor, every conference room, every private executive suite scattered throughout the building, including the very ballroom they were all standing inside at that exact moment. If you're still watching up to now, type, "I'm still here" in the comments section, because what happens backstage in the next few minutes is the twist nobody in that room saw coming, and I promise you, neither will you. The applause hadn't even fully died down before whispers began sweeping through the crowd like wildfire. Phones came out. Photos were taken. Somewhere near the bar, a junior analyst turned to his colleague and muttered, "Wait, isn't that Ethan Brooks' ex-wife?" Word spread faster than anyone could contain it. Backstage, away from the glittering chaos of the main hall, Vanessa's polished composure finally shattered completely. She found Emma near a quiet hallway, just off the ballroom, flanked by two assistants who stepped back the moment Vanessa approached, sensing the shift in atmosphere immediately. "Emma," Vanessa said, her voice tight, stripped of its usual confidence. "We need to talk. Privately." Emma studied her for a long moment before nodding once and gesturing toward a small private lounge just off the corridor. The moment the door closed behind them, Vanessa's carefully constructed mask slipped away entirely. "My company is drowning," she admitted, words tumbling out faster than she intended. "Our lenders are demanding immediate collateral. We've suffered catastrophic losses this quarter, losses we haven't made public yet. If our lease renewal for our headquarters here at Aurora Tower falls through, our investors will pull out within days. Banks will panic. Our valuation will collapse overnight. Thousands of people could lose their jobs, Emma. Thousands." Emma listened without interrupting, her expression calm, unreadable, almost gentle in its stillness. "And you're telling me this because you're the only person who can approve that renewal," Vanessa said, voice cracking slightly. "Please, I know we've never exactly been friends. I know the history between us is complicated, but this isn't about Ethan anymore. This is about real people, real families. Please." Before Emma could respond, the door opened again. Ethan stepped inside, his confident posture from earlier completely gone, replaced by something smaller, more uncertain. For the first time in what felt like years, he looked at Emma the way he used to look at her back when they first fell in love, not as an obstacle to his ambitions, but as someone whose opinion actually mattered to him. "Emma," he said quietly, "I didn't know about any of this. About you." "No," Emma said softly. "You didn't, because you stopped asking a long time ago." Ethan's jaw tightened. Guilt flickered across his face. "I'm sorry," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "For everything. For how I treated you. For the things I said. For choosing to walk away from someone who clearly deserved so much better than what I gave her." For the first time in months, he sounded humble. Genuinely, painfully humble. Emma took a slow breath, glancing between the two people who had once believed themselves untouchable, standing now in front of her stripped of every illusion they had built their identities around. "I knew about the affair 6 months before you filed for divorce," Emma finally said, her voice steady, calm, devastatingly quiet. "I knew about the gifts, the trips, the late-night messages. I knew before either of you thought I did." Vanessa's face went pale. Ethan looked down at the floor, unable to meet her eyes. "I approved this entire event," Emma continued, "not out of spite, and not for revenge. I approved it because I wanted both of you, and everyone in that ballroom, to witness, clearly and unmistakably, the difference between borrowed wealth and earned legacy. Between the image people wear to impress a room, and the substance that remains once the room empties out." She reached into the folder her assistant had quietly placed on the table earlier and slid it across toward Vanessa. Vanessa opened it with trembling hands, expecting a lease renewal agreement. Instead, she found an official notice. A termination of their lease agreement, effective at the end of its current term. No shouting, no cruelty, no dramatic declaration. Only consequences, delivered with the same calm precision Emma had used to build every single thing she owned. I built an empire in silence while everyone underestimated me, Emma said quietly, closing the folder gently in front of them. I won't spend another moment of my life explaining myself to people who never once took the time to truly see me. She turned and walked out of the room, leaving both of them standing in stunned, humbled silence, the weight of everything they'd lost finally settling in around them. Months passed after that night, and life in Aurora Tower transformed completely. Emma repositioned the entire building, filling its floors with innovative AI startups, promising biotech firms and clean energy companies backed personally by her investment group. The building didn't just survive. It thrived, becoming one of the most sought-after commercial spaces in the entire city, a symbol of quiet, patient reinvention. Emma launched an entirely new venture from her private executive office on the top floor. The same skyline Ethan had once dreamed of owning now stretched out beneath her own window instead. One quiet, rainy evening, she stood there watching people stream in and out of the tower's entrance far below. Entrepreneurs clutching laptop bags, investors hurrying through revolving doors, dreamers walking in with hope written plainly across their faces. None of them knew the years of pain, patience, and quiet strategy that had built the very ground beneath their feet. Across the street, almost as if fate had planned it, Ethan paused on the sidewalk, looking up at the illuminated building glowing against the dark evening sky. The same building he once assumed belonged to some faceless corporation. The same building where his entire world had quietly unraveled in a single night. Only now did he finally understand the truth. He hadn't lost Emma because another woman was wealthier, more glamorous, or more impressive. He lost her because he stopped truly knowing the woman standing right beside him, long before she ever had a reason to leave. Sometimes people spend years chasing treasure in places far from home, convinced that greater value must exist somewhere else, in someone else, in some other life entirely, only to look back one day and realize they abandoned real treasure with their own two hands, simply because they were too blinded by appearances to recognize its true worth. And that, more than any building, any fortune, or any title, became the most valuable lesson of Emma Carter's story, that quiet strength often outlasts loud ambition, that patience frequently outperforms cruelty, and that true legacy is never built on the approval of others, but on the steady, unwavering belief you choose to hold in yourself even when no one else seems to notice. If you made it all the way here, thank you so much for spending this time with us and staying until the very end of Emma's story. This journey carried real lessons worth holding on to. That true worth is never determined by how loudly someone announces their success, that patience and quiet strength can outlast even the deepest betrayal, and that the people who truly deserve your loyalty are the ones who see your value long before the rest of the world ever catches up. We'd love to know which part of this story stayed with you the most. Was it Emma's quiet strength throughout everything she endured, the moment she finally stepped into that spotlight, or the final twist backstage that changed everything? Drop a comment below and tell us what you enjoyed most about tonight's story. We read every single one we can. And if this story kept you hooked from beginning to end, do us a huge favor and hit that subscribe button so you never miss our next powerful story of betrayal, resilience, and unforgettable redemption. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.